betrayed by my own husband and my own sister. At 67, I thought I'd seen enough pain for a lifetime, but nothing prepared me for the moment I heard his voice whisper, "She's too old to uncover our affair. Come on me, baby." That wasn't for me, it was for her. Will I get my revenge? Subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because this story will make you question everything you believe about love, loyalty, and family. I was 67 when my world shattered, not with a scream, not with a sudden car crash, but with the quiet click of a voicemail. That morning had begun like any other. I was in the kitchen, the morning light pouring through the windows and casting warm squares on the floor. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cinnamon oatmeal, comforting smells, smells I had loved for years. I had just finished wiping down the counters when Gerald's phone vibrated on the granite. He'd left it behind, probably in a rush to get to his so-called tennis game with Frank, his equally grey, equally boring best friend from his accounting firm. I wouldn't have touched it. I've never believed in snooping, not in over 40 years of marriage, but something about the way the phone kept buzzing, something felt wrong. It wasn't just a text, it was a voicemail. The notification sat there like a blinking red warning light, and the name, Claire, my sister, my blood, 10 years younger, twice divorced, always the one who just needed to find herself. She'd crashed on our guest bed more times than I could count. I gave her a home when she was jobless, helped her raise her son after her second husband ran off with a waitress, and defended her through every chaotic decision she ever made. She was wild, yes, but never cruel, or so I thought. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. I told myself not to do it. I told myself I was being paranoid, but then I tapped. The first sound was her laugh, low, sultry, too familiar. "God, last night was wild, Jerry," she whispered, her voice thick with smugness. "You're terrible. I still smell like your cologne. Poor Margaret probably thinks you're too old for this kind of passion." My stomach turned to stone. Then came Gerald's voice, smooth, low, amused, a voice I'd once fallen in love with. "She's too old to uncover our affair. Come on me, baby." The phone nearly slipped from my hands. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, motionless. The oak clock ticked behind me, the oatmeal bubbled on the stove, my roses waved through the window in the morning breeze, and I couldn't breathe. They were sleeping together, Gerald and Claire, my husband and my sister, the two people I had loved the longest, trusted the most, sharing beds, secrets and lies, laughing about me, mocking me. I placed the phone back on the counter like it was radioactive, and then, without a sound, I turned off the stove, poured the oatmeal down the drain, and went out to the garden. I didn't cry, not yet. I just stared at the roses, crimson, blooming, beautiful. I had planted them after our 25th anniversary. Gerald had given me a silver locket that year, engraved with "Forever Yours." I had believed it. I had believed him. That belief died in me as I stood in the sun, watching those roses sway. The rest of the day I didn't move much. I made tea and sat in the sunroom. My thoughts were loud, too loud, a mix of betrayal and disbelief. I thought of the late nights he'd come home flushed and exhausted, the silk scarf I found in his car that Claire had claimed she lost at brunch, the perfume on his shirts that wasn't mine. It had been there all along. I just didn't want to see it. By the time the sun began to set, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry, quietly, coldly, focused, because see, Gerald had forgotten one very important thing. I may be old, but I'm not weak. I didn't spend 40 years building a life, raising 3 kids, managing our finances, only to be tossed aside like some dried-up side character in my own story. And Claire, oh Claire, she'd underestimated me too. I was the sister who held her hand when she had nowhere else to go, the one who never judged, never punished, but forgiveness has its limits. That night, Gerald came home whistling. He gave me a kiss on the cheek, his lips brushing mine like nothing had changed. "Smells amazing in here," he said. "Did you make roast?" "I did," I said, smiling. "Your favorite." He didn't notice the silence in my eyes. He didn't feel the distance behind my smile. He just sat down, loosened his tie, and turned on the news like it was any other Thursday night, like he wasn't burning down our marriage behind my back. I served him dinner. I asked him about tennis. He lied. I nodded. I even laughed at his stupid joke about Frank's double fault. But inside, I was calculating, measuring. You see, after his minor heart attack last year, Gerald begged me to handle everything, the bank accounts, the legal forms, the property paperwork. He was tired, he said, he needed me to take over, and I had, out of love, out of loyalty. What he didn't know was that I still held power of attorney over our joint properties, including the cottage in Carmel he had gifted to Claire. Foolishly, I had let it happen, but the paperwork, still in my hands. That night, after he went to bed, I sat at my old writing desk and pulled out the folder I hadn't looked at in months. Deeds, trusts, legal rights he didn't know I still had. They wanted passion, they wanted secrets, they were about to get something far better, me at my sharpest, at my coldest, at my most calculating. They thought I was too old to uncover their affair. They were about to learn that nothing ages faster than guilt. The days that followed passed like fog, thick, slow, and disorienting, but beneath the surface, I was wide awake. I moved through my home like a shadow in my own life, brushing fingertips across the walls we painted together, folding his socks with the same care I had since 1982, setting the table for two as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I had seen the true faces behind the familiar ones, and now I was living among ghosts. Gerald moved about obliviously, kissing my cheek, humming while shaving, bringing me a coffee from the cafe down the street like some doting husband in a Hallmark movie. I drank it with a smile, while I catalogued every receipt, every shared asset, every lie he'd whispered into Claire's ear that he thought I was too blind or too old to uncover. I spent hours in our study, the one he rarely entered because the files gave him migraines. There, I found a quiet kind of power I hadn't touched in years. I ran my fingers across manila envelopes and legal documents I'd once considered dull but now felt like weapons. The cottage deed, yes, still in both our names, not transferred like he'd told Claire. Our joint bank accounts with that hidden savings stash I'd built quietly from birthday checks, estate leftovers from my mother, even a secret dividend account I started when he bought a second Lexus without asking. Gerald was careless with paper, and Claire was reckless with trust. They underestimated the woman who'd managed their finances for decades, who knew every PIN code, every drawer, every safe, every tiny pattern in their behavior. But even as I plotted in silence, my heart ached, not for Gerald. That love had withered the moment I heard his voice ooze into that voicemail, but for the loss of something I had protected for so long. Marriage, sisterhood, family. I thought about our wedding day, the way his hands had trembled as he slid the ring onto my finger. I remembered when Claire was 12 and sobbing over her first heartbreak, and I snuck her a chocolate bar from the fridge and told her some people just don't deserve your softness. Now I wondered, had I been speaking to myself all along? I didn't want rage to drive me, I wanted something stronger, strategy, so I made a list, on real paper, with a blue pen, the kind of ink that doesn't fade easily, secured a deed, reassigned the emergency contact from Gerald to Rachel, my daughter, thankfully still loyal, visit the lawyer, quietly, let them feel safe. See, I decide, let them feel safe. That was the key, because if I wanted this to really work, I had to make them believe I was clueless, oblivious, old, so I played my part. I made blueberry muffins for Gerald the next morning, and asked Claire over a fake, strained phone call if she wanted to join us for Sunday brunch next week. Her voice was sweet, too sweet, with that forced politeness she used when she thought she was winning. Sure sis, she said, it's been too long. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Sunday came. I wore my peach cardigan and my pearls. I even put on the perfume Gerald bought me 10 years ago from a trip he took alone to Portland, or so he claimed. Claire arrived in a silky blouse and that fake surprised smile women wear when they think they've fooled everyone. She brought wine. Gerald kissed her cheek too casually and my stomach turned. We sat at the table, and I served the food like a hostess, asking about Claire's job, Gerald's tennis, all the while wondering how they could sit across from me and pretend. But I had already won a silent battle that day, because what they didn't know was that the moment they parked their car in our driveway, they crossed a legal boundary I had redefined just days earlier, that beach cottage they loved so much, the one they snuck away to help Claire relax. It had been legally transferred into a private trust I created with Rachel. Gerald signed the paperwork unknowingly, thank you blood pressure meds and his habit of not reading small print. He thought it was a refinance form. I watched him sign it on Thursday, Claire had no idea, and a lawyer, an old student of mine, now practicing in San Diego, a quiet genius who offered a simple but brilliant suggestion: let them act freely while you lock the doors behind them, one by one. That night, after Claire left and Gerald fell asleep snoring into his pillow like nothing was wrong, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the life I had built, piece by piece. I touched the back of the wooden chair he always sat in and remembered how he used to pull it out for me in our early years. I looked at the dishes and recalled the thousands of meals I had cooked, the birthdays, the anniversaries, and yet, here I was, alone with my pain, betrayed in silence, rewriting my fate one signature at a time. I didn't cry, not even when the wind outside knocked over one of my flower pots. I just watched it roll across the patio like a little piece of my old life trying to escape. I didn't chase it, because now I was building something new. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet. I wasn't going to scream, flip a table, or slap a face. That's what they expected. That's what they thought I couldn't do. What they didn't know was that the most dangerous woman is the one you overlook, the one who listens, who smiles, who waits, the one who's been underestimated for too long. My revenge wouldn't be a scene, it would be a sequence, slow, surgical, devastating, and the best part, they would never see it coming. It started with a coffee invitation, nothing dramatic, just one sister reaching out to another, or so it seemed. Let's meet, I said over text, just us girls. I miss you. I could practically hear her false eyelashes fluttering over the phone as she typed back. Would love to, sis. The emoji stung like a mosquito bite, tiny, venomous, and so performative it made my stomach twist, but I swallowed it down. After all, I had invited this dance. I chose the little bistro on 4th, the one with the French pastries she always used to fawn over. I arrived 10 minutes early as I always do, and chose a seat by the window, where the light hit just right, bright enough to catch every twitch in her fake smile, every nervous flutter of her eyes once I started pulling threads. She arrived in heels too high for a casual morning, and a lipstick shade I hadn't seen her wear since college, the kind of bright red that screamed, I'm still young, still desirable, still worth sneaking around for. Her hug was light, feathery, meaningless. I returned it with one that lingered just long enough to whisper without words, I know everything. She ordered a cappuccino. I got my usual Earl Grey. Small talk floated between us like steam off our cups. How's your hip holding up? She asked. You look great for your age. I smiled. Funny you say that every time you're sleeping with someone else's husband. Her cup paused mid-air, just for a heartbeat, before she forced out a breathy laugh. What are you talking about? She said too quickly, too high-pitched. Don't be ridiculous. I leaned back slowly, watching her squirm. I'm not being ridiculous, Claire. I heard the voicemail. Silence. Deafening, blooming silence between us as her pupils darted to the window, to her purse, to the sugar packets, anywhere but my face. You don't know what you heard, she finally muttered, but her voice had lost its volume, her defense crumbling before it could even rise. I didn't need her confession. I had it in her panic, her refusal to meet my eyes, in the slight tremor in her right hand as she sipped. That was enough for now, because this wasn't the moment for vengeance, it was the moment for fear. I wanted her to stew in it, to feel it curling around her ribs every time she saw my name on her phone. I wanted her guessing just how much I knew, just how deep I planned to cut. You really think he's going to leave me for you? I asked, voice calm, almost maternal. You think you're going to be the new Mrs. Blake? Replace me in the house I decorated, the bed I chose, the family I held together while you were playing lost little girl? She opened her mouth, closed it again. It's not like that, she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. It is like that, I said gently, and I'm not angry, Claire. I'm disappointed, not because you betrayed me, but because you did it so sloppily. Her eyes flashed at that, her pride kicking up like dust in a drought. She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. Don't bother defending him either. He's not the first man to think he can trade in his loyal wife for a shinier, younger version of something he already ruined. But you were my sister. I let that word hang. Were. I didn't need to scream or cry. I had already mourned her. Now I was just delivering the eulogy. She blinked hard, biting her lip like a teenager caught shoplifting. What do you want from me? She finally spat. An apology? I smiled. No, I want you to wait. She blinked. Wait for what? for the consequences. That's all I said before I stood and walked out, leaving her sitting there with a full cup of cappuccino and hands too shaky to drink it. I could feel her eyes on me as I walked away, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because the first crack in her perfect little act had finally split open. And once a crack forms, all it takes is time for the whole thing to fall apart. That night, Gerald noticed I wasn't wearing my wedding ring. "Lose it?" he asked, his voice casual, but his brow creased just enough to betray concern. I smiled. "No, just letting my skin breathe." He nodded slowly, confused. I let him sit in that discomfort. I didn't bring up Claire. I didn't need to, not yet, because I wanted him to think he'd gotten away with it. I wanted him relaxed, confident, smug. I wanted him to feel safe with his secrets, until the ground collapsed underneath him. Over the next week, I began making quiet changes. I visited Rachel and told her everything, not because I wanted pity, but because I wanted my daughter on my side when the storm broke. She was furious, of course, protective, but when I told her the plan, the full plan, her anger cooled into admiration. "You've always been 5 steps ahead, Mom," she said, gripping my hand. "Let's bury them." And so we did. I moved money. I contacted a realtor to quietly assess the house value. I updated the trust. I made calls to cancel things Gerald didn't even know I was still paying for, subscriptions, insurances, bills tied to the Carmel cottage. I cut off Claire's access before she even knew she had lost it. Her keycard to the security gate, disabled. The cottage Wi-Fi, cancelled. Water too. Let her find out while sipping cheap wine in her robe and wondering why the faucet hissed dry. Each move I made was silent, surgical, precise, but not without pain, because make no mistake, this wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclaiming something they tried to take from me, my worth. They thought I'd wither in the face of betrayal, that I'd retreat into sadness, knitting sweaters in a dim corner while they moved on with their lies. But I wasn't the side character in their little love story. I was the storm they never saw coming. It started with the cottage. I knew it would. Gerald loved that place, our so-called escape house, that little beachfront getaway, had witnessed everything, our summer barbecues, our winter getaways, the Christmas we spent alone when Rachel had the flu and Claire was in Italy. It was supposed to be sacred, but now it was their love nest, a place for them to play house while I stayed home folding his laundry and pretending not to notice the sand in his cuffs. So I took it back, quietly, legally, permanently, and the fallout came faster than even I had expected. One night around 9, Gerald stormed into the bedroom, holding his phone like it had personally insulted him. "There's something wrong with the utilities at the cottage," he barked. "Claire says there's no water, no heat, the gate won't open with the remote." I looked up from my book calmly and offered a mild shrug. "Odd," I said. "Maybe it's a billing error." He grumbled something and stomped out, already calling the HOA like a man who still believed the world bent for him. He didn't know that I'd frozen every connection in the trust, changed the ownership title, and rerouted access through my name. That cottage didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to me and Rachel. Every faucet, every key, every drawer. Claire must have been fuming in her silk robe with her wet hair and her full sense of entitlement. And yet it was only the first pebble in what would become an avalanche. 3 days later, the Lexus was towed. Gerald was livid, veins bulging as he shouted into the phone with the dealership. "What do you mean it was paid through a shared account?" he shouted. "My wife handles that." I was in the kitchen buttering toast when he slammed his phone down. "Margaret, did you cancel the auto draft on the car payment?" he demanded. I looked up with a confused expression. "I didn't realize it was coming from our joint account. I had to move some things around. Emergency expenses." I paused. "Besides, you've been driving to the cottage so often, I assumed it was a business vehicle now." The way his eyes flinched at the word cottage told me everything I needed. He knew I knew, and now he was starting to wonder what else I knew. Still, I never said the word affair, not once. I didn't need to. Let him live with the tension. Let it stew. The not knowing was worse than confrontation. He began pacing at night, staring into his scotch glass like it might hold answers. Claire started calling late, whispering frantically into the phone. "Gerald, what's going on? Why is everything shutting down?" I could hear her voice from the hallway. I made sure to leave the door cracked, just wide enough to hear his silence, no answers, no reassurances, because the truth was finally beginning to corner them, but it was Claire who cracked first. She showed up at my doorstep uninvited, dressed like she was coming from a spa, but her face told a different story, tight-lipped, eyes slightly puffy, nails picked to the quick. I opened the door with my best surprised smile. "Claire, what a surprise. Gerald's not home." She gave me a tight smile. "I'm not here for him." Liar. She stepped inside, uninvited but acting as if she belonged there. Her eyes scanned the living room like a spy in enemy territory. "I just came to talk," she said, setting her purse down too carefully. "Things have been tense." I offered her tea. She declined. She wasn't here to sip. She was here to grovel or threaten. I couldn't tell which yet. "You're angry," she said, her tone soft and calculated. "I understand. What happened wasn't right, but love is complicated. You and Gerald have grown apart." And I cut her off with a single raised hand. "Don't insult me, Claire," I said. "Don't try to wrap betrayal in poetic excuses. You knew what you were doing. You knew he was married. You knew I was your sister." She flinched at the last word, like it burned now. "But I didn't come here to fight," she said quickly. "I came because I think we can fix this." "Fix this?" I laughed. "What exactly are you trying to fix? My broken marriage? Your reputation? The cottage you can't use anymore?" Her jaw clenched. She was unraveling, not because I'd screamed or thrown dishes, but because I remained cold, calm, in control. She expected me to beg for my marriage. She expected me to melt with sadness. But I sat there like a stone in the storm, solid and immovable. I saw her for what she was now, not a sister, not a threat, but a woman in freefall, grasping at the illusion of power. I said slowly, "You're starting to realize that this game of yours, it was never a checkmate, it was a trap, one you walked into thinking I was too old, too soft, too blind." Claire stood abruptly, her mask cracked for just a moment, lips twitching with something like panic, eyes darting. "I won't let you ruin our lives," she snapped. "Our lives?" I echoed. "No, Claire, you already did that. I'm just pulling back the curtain." She left without another word, slammed the door so hard the frame shuddered. I didn't chase her. I poured myself a cup of tea and turned on the radio. Soft jazz filled the room as I stared out the window and let the silence settle. Gerald came home later than usual. No explanations, no eye contact. I didn't ask, but I could feel the walls closing in around him, like he was walking through a house that was no longer his, breathing in air that didn't belong to him. The balance had shifted, and he knew it. I watched him pick up his phone, hesitate, then set it back down. His hand trembled slightly, and I smiled, because guilt wasn't the punishment, oblivion was, and I was only getting started. It all came to a head on a Friday, a day like any other to the world outside, but to me it was the day I would bury the lies and let the truth scream from the grave. I dug for their trust. I wore a navy blue dress, simple, sharp, understated, the kind you wear when you're not mourning a loss, but presiding over a funeral you orchestrated yourself. The first strike had been silent, the cottage, the bank accounts, the Lexus, the layers of financial dependence they didn't even realize were linked to me until I quietly dissolved them. But this final act, it would be loud. The event was Gerald's annual charity gala, his pride and joy, a self-indulgent soiree where he played the generous husband, the successful man, the public image he clung to like armor. And every year Claire showed up too, draped in jewels I had once worn, laughing with the smugness of someone who believed they'd won. But not tonight. Rachel arrived at my house an hour early, wearing a sleek black suit and a look in her eyes I hadn't seen since she won that custody battle 10 years ago. Calculated fury. "Are you ready, Mom?" she asked as she helped me with my coat. I nodded. I've been ready since the day he whispered "come on me baby" into her voicemail like I didn't matter. We didn't go to the gala to sit quietly in a corner. We arrived with purpose, heads high, heels sharp, and truth burning in my handbag. The ballroom was glowing, chandeliers dripping in crystals, champagne flutes clinking, music floating like perfume. Gerald was at the center, smiling that fake politician smile, hand on Claire's lower back as they welcomed guests. They didn't see me at first, but others did. Heads turned, whispers followed, and then Gerald's smile cracked. His eyes met mine across the room, and for the first time in our 32-year marriage, he looked afraid, not of exposure, not of scandal, but of me. Claire followed his gaze, and her expression curdled faster than cream in heat. She was wearing my necklace, the diamond choker Gerald had given me on our 25th anniversary, bold, foolish, pathetic. My stomach twisted, not with heartbreak anymore, but with the thrill of watching it all fall apart. I didn't waste time. I walked right up to them, each step echoing like a gavel in court. "Evening, Gerald." "Claire," I said it like a prayer before a sacrifice. Claire opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the chance. From my bag, I pulled out the manila envelope, neat, heavy, final. Inside it, notarized bank statements showing how every financial string tied back to me, the property documents reassigning the cottage under my name, and most delicious of all, printed transcriptions of the voicemail. The voicemail, that grotesque confession that launched this entire collapse. I handed it to Gerald and leaned in. "You'll want to read those before Monday," I whispered, "because by then your board of directors will already have a copy, so will the ethics committee, and the press, if I'm feeling generous." His hand trembled as he opened it. Claire tried to grab it, but I yanked it back and shoved another copy into her palm. "Yours too," I said sweetly. I made sure to highlight the part where he says you're a welcome distraction from a dying wife. Her mouth fell open. Gerald turned red. The room began to still. Quiet laughter stopped. Conversation hushed. People were watching now. Perfect. "You think betrayal comes cheap?" I asked loud enough for those around us to hear. "You think you get to lie, cheat, and humiliate me, while I keep your secrets and wipe your lipstick off my wine glasses? No, Gerald, no more." Claire's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. "This isn't the time or place," she hissed. "Oh, I think it is," I replied calmly. "In fact, I think it's perfect." Security was cold, of course. Gerald tried to save face, tried to spin it into a misunderstanding, a private family matter, but it was too late. Whispers had turned into conversations, conversations into judgment. I had stolen the spotlight and bathed it in their shame, and I wasn't done. The next morning, I sent emails to the charities board, a full report, the financial misconduct, the affair, the reallocation of funds to cover the cottage's expenses. Claire's name was all over it too. I knew Gerald had used that account to gift her a new kitchen remodel, a kitchen I paid for. Their affair wasn't just immoral, it was taxable. The investigation began 2 days later. Gerald was quietly asked to resign from the board. Claire was blacklisted from every gala from San Francisco to Napa. Their phones stopped ringing, invitations dried up like spilled gin. And me, I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, Rachel by my side, and smiled. I had sold the house 2 weeks earlier, another move they hadn't seen coming. I bought a smaller place in Sonoma, quiet, bright, peaceful. I didn't need chandeliers or tennis courts. I needed dignity, peace, and to finally sleep at night without wondering who he was texting under the table. A week later, Claire showed up again. No makeup, no heels, just red eyes and a crumpled expression. She stood at my door and said, "You win." I looked at her, really looked at her, this woman who had once been my little sister, who used to braid my hair and cry at my wedding, and I felt nothing. "This wasn't a game," I said. "You both lost," and I closed the door.